Hey folks. Okay, got a big one for you today. Oh my God, some days it's like the universe is just reaching down inside my psyche, soul, whatever, and just exposing me to myself in a delightfully excruciating way. I found an essay as I was cleaning up my office, which if you saw my post yesterday, you know is the task that I'm going to be talking about for the next 3 weeks, that I wrote in college. Says October 8th, 1997. That's one day after my 21st birthday. So it's about Milton's essay, Areopagitica, which is basically I think a lightly veiled commentary on censorship in Milton's time. My essay, let me back up. I began I did my second day of my writing program today, and the writing prompt today was, what does your inner critic say when you go to write? Or what does your inner critic say about your writing? What does it feel like? That editor that we all have inside of our head, what do they say about your writing? What do you feel their influence feels like? So I started to think about that, and I had just picked up this essay and sort of scanned it again. And you know, my first answer to that question, if I hadn't read this essay, if I hadn't found this essay from 20 years ago, I would have said something like, you know, my inner critic feels like I don't have the time to make my work good enough. I don't have, you know, I have a sense of what good writing is, or I have a sense of what I want to express, but I never quite seem to have the time to be able to manifest that. Something like that is what comes up for me frequently as I'm avoiding my work. So, but because I just read this essay, there was something else kicking around my mind. As I read this essay from literally 4 years ago? Yeah, almost 24, it'll be 24 years ago in like 2 weeks. I hear a tone coming through that's so arrogant and so smug and just kind of like unselfconsciously pompous. Like, I dared to write this. When I read this essay, what is it? So the very first sentence of this essay: this paper is coming from someone who would like to think that they themselves have done a little searching for the truth, the meaning of life. In short, for that elusive entity that is so often trivialized into a trite, banal cliche and brandished by the weekend spiritual warrior. But I can't imagine anyone but a handful of people have ever really understood. That's one sentence, and it's the first sentence of this essay. And look, my loving and amazing teacher, Mr. Golzani, crossed it out and very helpfully and non-judgmentally says, this is very heavy and wordy and really doesn't help you get into your subject. The teacher's comments on this were so beautiful for me to read, because I have these passages where I just go on and on about, oh, wait, let me find one. This is embarrassing. What do I say? this isn't worth reading. It's not worth it's not worth your time. But like a sentence like, I think that in a day and age when I am an individual has become the battle cry of the conformist, and all but the most blatant moral truths are disregarded in favor of a relativistic approach to right and wrong, the notion that this seemingly liberated philosophy might actually be the hedonist's or libertine's disguise of his own enslavement is one which cannot be taken lightly. My teacher says, your prose is correct, but there's something about tone in relation to audience in a passage like this that is going to alienate some readers, not just the fools either. Beware the appearance, however unintended, of standing on the mountain peak looking down contemptuously upon the smelly masses. Oh my God. And then he says, it takes enormous wit to pull such a stance off, which clearly was lacking here. What this illustrated to me was a kind of, you know, again, so there's something about this that I read and it's excruciating, right? It's excruciating to read myself, because I thought that comment that the teacher made is exactly right. Standing on the mountain peak looking down upon the smelly masses. Well, that's not a flattering thing to observe oneself doing. Right? That makes me now, at 24 years later, makes me cringe to think that I expressed that so freely and was just like, blah. But there's something in there that I was able to, again, I have enough distance now off of it, that I was able to see through. And I was able to see, oh, that arrogance isn't just my nature. It's not just who it's not me. That's not what Robin Hall, that's not the soul of Robin connected to the absolute, expressing the voice of the absolute. That's an ego's desperate compensation for a feeling of unworthiness, a feeling of marginalization, of not being able to relate to people, of not being connected. And as I think back to this time in my life and where I was, and where I was, the actual place I was going to school, and the previous years of having moved back to the United States from Germany, and total culture shock, clash, explosion, everything in my life kind of blowing up. Going through a couple different high schools, barely hanging on, and then getting to college and sort of, finding my footing a little bit, but still being in a place of real kind of precarious identity. That arrogance is not just because I'm an asshole. With the writing, so then coming back to my writing prompt today, what does your inner critic say about your writing? I was like, oh, my inner critic is the force in me that I felt at this time judging me from the outside. It was the thing that I had to compensate for with this high-flown prose and this kind of perspective of superiority. That's my inner critic. My inner critic is the force that felt oppressive enough at this time in my life to make me feel like this way of expressing myself was necessary, was what it took to make me feel like I was claiming my value, claiming my worth, knowing who I was, daring to say what I wanted to say, all these things luckily I'm looking at this with enough time that I can see the innocence behind it, even as I see the kind of like, there's a kind of ickiness. It's still hard not to feel that, but there's also enough distance that I can understand. Oh, look at my psychology. Look at where I am. Look at what's really going on there. And I think so. What's been showing up as a result of that is a real appreciation for the power of my inner critic. And of course, on some level, I've mellowed, I've grown up, I've had relationships with people, I've matured in innumerable ways since this time. And I've had the opportunity to examine who I am and to feel my value in a whole other ways, so that I don't have to feel like that's where that's not doesn't need to be my mode of engagement anymore. But at the same time, there's part of me that still has a little of this. It's just been driven underground. I wouldn't unselfconsciously express that anymore, but I would still feel it. And that's where I was like, oh, if my inner critic, if that critic is still there, to the extent that I still buy into that voice that's telling me that, to that extent, I'm still going to manifest this subconsciously. I might not hand in an essay out in public to a teacher and be like, look what I think. But I would maybe feel it or think it. And I think this is teaching me something about, really taking seriously that notion of our inner critic and what it is we're leveraging against ourselves. Because at this point, the critic that I feel, they don't exist. They're not alive. They never lived. It's a compilation of experiences, people, circumstances, all of which are gone and will never happen again. And even my memory of them, if I have a memory of them, isn't a reality. It's just my memory. So much of our reality is constructed. It might as well not even be real. All that is now, that inner critic, is a pattern of how I think about myself. That's it. And getting that and realizing I have a choice in that whatever that voice is saying doesn't need to, I don't have to allow it to have any power over what I express or what I think or how I perceive my own value. That's liberating. That's really liberating. What I came to in my writing prompt was, what if I can just express imperfectly? What if I don't have to be perfect? What if it can be wrong? What if I can say things, write things, do things that are not good? And it's okay. I'm learning. That's where I am today, folks. Yeah, if you want to get a good reflection, dig up some college essays. Definitely highly recommend that. Much love. Appreciate you. Thanks for watching. Oh my God. You mean so much. Have a wonderful day. I'll see you soon.